African Americans were quite low. And you also don't support reparations for slave descendants. Why do you think your poll numbers are low, and why don't you support reparations?
Well, first of all, our poll numbers are not low. I think if you look at polls in the last 6 months, they're quite high among the African American community.
Okay.
And even in 2016, we ended up winning by good margins votes from younger African Americans and Latinos and whites. We did very well among younger African Americans.
Chinese delegation will go to Indianapolis this week to claim a massive trove of artifacts brought to the U.S. by an eccentric Indiana collector. The FBI seized about 360 ancient items from ceramics to weapons in 2014. In a story you'll see only on CBS This Morning, Anna Werner reveals what else the government found. She's been working on this story for months. Anna, good morning.
Good morning. And these artifacts were part of a vast collection gathered by a man named Don. He was 91 years old when the FBI showed up at his home in 2014 for what may be the largest seizure from a private collection ever. They said Miller wasn't supposed to have many of those rare and ancient items. Now we're learning some unsettling information about what else the FBI found.
Socialist pacifist, right? Like, he's actually America's worst nightmare.
He was openly gay, he was a socialist, he was an organizer. That's great, but what's missing are his actual ideas. And why is that? Well, his intersectional credentials fit the spirit of modern activism, but his ideas?
Well, that it makes coming to a consensus in a body like this really difficult. I think the important thing is, despite what happens here, the gathering is going to continue to move forward with a ministry that fully includes all people, including LGBTQ people.
United Methodist Church is the third largest faith community in the U.S.
Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Hello, and this is Black Minds News. I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind, and this channel is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, articulate, relay, unveil, decode, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created the so-called greatest country on the planet, we and you and the rest of us in this land and all over, we give honor to our ancestors. And you know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Yeah, that's right, y'all. Done snuck another one in. I know I'm not being regular, y'all. Y'all just don't understand. Oh, what I'm doing in the background, trying to have another format, another venue to be able to, again, I am the most suppressed channel you'll ever see on YouTube, blatantly. And again, as you've seen the last video, again, I kind of, put that together. Again, it was more about what the end part was for those who went out there and seen the video. You got to see that, again, as I've been stating, this is the dead corner of the internet due to the simple fact that I have a URL, personal URL, and they just got it on the dead corner. But before I get into all that, first and foremost, I want to say what's good to my fam, the subscribers. What's good, fam? Glad you stopped by, okay? I know I'm a little slow at things, but there's some things I'm working in. And again, we'll get back again once this 90 days is over again, when they really have not explained why I have 90 days. But just be patient. We'll get back to the live show. Then I can have more interaction with you personally. Passerbys, welcome. This is the Black Minds TV, the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. We always got a grand opening over here. All you got to do is go down the aisle, see something you like, hit that like button. See something you don't like, hit the dislike button. We can have a manager or supervisor come out. Maybe they have a conversation with you, give you an IOU, we'll give you a discount for the next time on your return. And maybe you see something you might like the second time around. And we are welcoming you passing by. Agents, you know, it is the season, right? It's just the time and the era, I guess, you know, just that time of the season, right? Anyway, ain't too much for you. You know, you got to do what you got to do, right? So anyway, as I was saying, being the most hated show in the black corner of the internet is due to the simple fact that, again, well, you know, some people want to say, well, I don't understand. There's a lot more. Well, yes, there's other shows out here, right? And I'm not saying that other people are not putting out good content. You know, channels are pretty much evaluated on the content that you do, right? And so sometimes you may not understand, but again, when you understand that we're dealing with the news and there's things that are not the general news, right, don't really kind of touch those stories. So again, on this channel here, what we do is we touch it all, right? We have no boundaries. If it's just part of the news, it's just part of the news. Again, we don't do this to, you know, plunge it and beat people. Well, we just kind of present, because again, we being the DOS, the ADOS, the BADOS, we have to stay informed, because we understand that we, as John Henry Clark has always eloquently said, we have no friends, right? And so by the fact that we have no friends, that doesn't mean that we don't have people who align with us, who are be friends with us and understand our plight and our struggles, and we recognize them as well. But we also got to understand that, again, those who be are the grassroots, the blood and sweat and soil of this land, and as the descendants of that, we understand that, again, like having a bill. You understand when it says the bill is due, right? So for 400 years, we didn't allow the bill to be in the white, right? So finally, you get in the pink bill, right? So when you get the pink bill, you know, you have to say, I can't bullshit no more. I got to go here and throw something on this bill, even if it's the minimum to keep the shit going, right? So, you know, right now, that's what's happening here with the DOS. They are giving the country a pink letter, right? Or the red letter, right? Red be disconnected and pink be kind of like the final warning, right? Well, that's what's happening here. And at first, it was kind of a laughing matter, and people were kind of chiding it off. But, what's wrong with these Negroes? What are they really talking about, right? So it was kind of, they got sent out the first wave of army, and they kind of, you know, failed, because again, this is real to us. This is not something that you read in a book. This is our lives. These are the things that we have had to endure and persevere and cry and laugh and, you know, tragedies, you know, from our inception. And so you have some people who are putting things together, you know, again, that's what they, you know, again, we all have to figure out what is our purpose coming here. And so we find out that we have some people who've been put together, again, like kind of a Voltron, and they're trying to put, you know, a good case together to say, hey, this is what it is. They're putting out some good stats, good information, and people of heart and mind and spirit are actually kind of gravitating to it. And so all we can do is kind of support it in our own ways that we all can do, being part of that. And so we're going to start the show off with, again, you know, as this is the season, right? You know, this is the political season, and, you know, candidates are all out here trying to get people to, you know, get the glance of your eye and try to get your, you know, hand to pull the lever to get them into the position of a job with promises maybe they can't keep. So, you know, again, I have, you know, you can see on the screen the Twitter page there. It's TV_BLAK. You can see why I have put some things out there. Again, if you can follow me there, so when I'm going to do video, you can be up on it. Right, got Instagram and so forth and other things. Again, if you would like to have that, you know how you can just send a message to me. It will come directly to me, and I will respond to them. Now, there's Bernard Thomas out there, and there is Sharon Washington out there, and a couple other brothers and sisters that's out there. Again, I'll probably be sending them to you because, again, we do kind of go back and forth here and there. So, you know, those of you will get directing to anybody else. Well, you do have to just send it. Let me know you would be interested in getting. But you do have the Twitter on your page right in front of you, right, or a screen, right? So much. So anyway, all right. So I seen the story. And again, this is up the alley because of the simple fact that, again, like I said, this is the season for it because, again, it's a political season and people getting out in front and again. So everybody feel like they can just, you know, get around this. Again, as I said, the bill is due. The bill is not even in the just, you know, a courtesy to the bill now. It's really in the red. And so when you start to ask people directly up front what happens, well, this is what kind of happens. You know, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to give you this. And then what I want to give you behind this, right, what I want to give you behind it is, let me give you a little history for those who may not have known some of the things that people had said prior to, and maybe this is the reason why individuals will use it. And then in the dissertation about my thoughts on it, I will tell you my perspective of how I interpret this. So again, let me go ahead and play this and don't hold you up no more. So sit back for a quick second and let's see how we're going to start off the day, right? Let's get it.
Now, the last time you ran, your poll numbers with African Americans were quite low. And you also don't support reparations for slave descendants. Why do you think your poll numbers are low, and why don't you support reparations?
Well, first of all, our poll numbers are not low. I think if you look at polls in the last 6 months, they're quite high among the African American community.
Okay.
And even in 2016, we ended up winning by good margins votes from younger African Americans and Latinos and whites. We did very well among younger African Americans. Look, I happen to believe that at a time of tremendous disparity, the wealth gap, for example, between the white community and the black community is like 10 to 1. Health disparities are terrible. Environmental disparities are terrible. Flint, Michigan comes to mind.
Yeah.
So I think what we have got to do is pay attention to distressed communities, black communities, Latino communities, and white communities all over this country. And as president, I pledge to do that.
Why not support reparations, then?
Well, what do you mean by reparations?
By reparations for slave defendants.
I know, but what does that mean exactly?
Money.
Well, I think that right now our job is to address the crises facing the American people and our communities. And I think there are better ways to do that than just writing out a check.
What Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton have said about reparations for slavery. You know I'm going to say that again. What Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton have said about reparations for slavery. This story was done January the 26th, 2016, coming from the PolitiFacts. And this is how it reads. From single-payer health care to free college tuition for all, Bernie Sanders' policy proposals have been both dismissed and lauded as radical. But when it comes to reparation for slavery, some fault the Vermont senator and presidential candidate for holding a more conventional view. Sanders' opposition to reparations has been the subject of some controversy after Ta-Nehisi Coates called him out in The Atlantic, writing, "Unfortunately, Sanders' radicalism has failed in the ancient fight against white supremacy. What he proposes in lieu of reparations, job creation, investment in cities, and free higher education is well within the Overton window, and his platform on race echoes democratic orthodoxy." Meet the Press host, Chuck Todd, followed up with Sanders about Coates' column January 24th, asking, "Why aren't you for reparation because of slavery for African Americans when you're calling for the economic justice on so many other levels? Why do you stop short on that issue?" Well, for the same reason that Barack Obama has, and the same reason I believe that Hillary Clinton has, Sanders responded, and that is, it is absolutely wrong and unacceptable that we have so much poverty in this country, and it's even worse in the African American communities. Todd chided Sanders for not answering the question, but Sanders again deflected that it was for the same reasons as Obama and Clinton. It is true that his position against reparation is the same as Clinton and Obama's views. Sanders is right that Obama's opposition echoes his own. Quotes calls this the conventional Democratic philosophy of a rising tide lifts all boats. Clinton's stance is less direct but largely follows the same rationale. Sanders' case against reparations. First, let's explain why Sanders is opposed to reparation for African Americans. When first asked about the issue by Fusion at the January 11th Iowa Brown and Black Democratic Forum, Sanders stressed the political impracticability and polarizing nature of the proposal and suggests prioritizing current economic inequalities in lieu of compensating for past injustices. First of all, its likelihood of getting through Congress is nil. Second of all, I think it would be very divisive. The real issue is when we look at the poverty rate among the African American communities, when we look at the high unemployment rate within the African American communities, we have a lot of work to do. So I think what we should be talking about is making massive investments in rebuilding our cities, creating millions of decent paying jobs, and making public colleges and university tuition free. Basically targeting our federal resources to the areas where it is needed the most. And where it is needed the most is in impoverished communities, often African Americans and Latinos. On Meet the Press, Sanders pretty much dropped the pragmatism argument, though he pushed back on the notion that his economic proposals are politically impossible, and focused instead on the second part of his rationale about improving economic conditions and schools for minorities. So how much does this mirror, if at all, the approach by Obama and Clinton? Obama's opposition. In 2007 and 2008, the presidential candidate Obama voiced his opposition to reparations, arguing that the best way to amend for the past is to focus on the present and future. I think the reparations we need right here in South Carolina is investment. For example, in our schools, Obama said in a July 2007 CNN debate. Obama couched his opposition somewhat differently in the 2007 NAACP presidential questionnaire. He said that nothing, including reparations, can fully compensate for the stain of slavery before arguing that reparations could lead to negligence on other matters of racial injustices. I fear that reparations would be an excuse for some to say we paid our debt, and to avoid the much harder work of enforcing our anti-discrimination laws and employment and housing, the much harder work of making sure that our schools are not separate and unequal, the much harder work of providing job training programs and rehabilitating young men coming out of prisons every year, and the much harder work of lifting 37 million Americans of all races out of poverty. These challenges will not go away with reparations, so while I applaud and agree with the underlying sentiment of recognizing the continued legacy of slavery, I would prefer to focus on the issues that will directly address these problems and building a consensus to do just that. Obama explained he will not pursue reparation because the action could be used as an excuse not to work on other lingering problems for minorities. Here, Obama's commitment sounds different from Sanders. Sanders and Obama sound more aligned in these comments by Obama from July 2008, which both Obama and Sanders' campaign pointed out. You know, I have said in the past, and I'll repeat it again, that the best reparations we can provide are good schools in the inner city and jobs for people who are unemployed. And, I think that strategies that invest in lifting people out of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow, but that have broad applicability and allow us to build coalitions to actually get these things done, that I think is the best strategy. The fact is, it is that dealing with some of the legacies of discrimination is going to cost billions of dollars, and we're not going to be able to have that kind of resource allocation unless all Americans feel that they are invested in making this stuff happen. And so, you know, I'm much more interested in talking about how do we get every child to learn? How do we get every person health care? How do we make sure that everybody has a job? How do we make sure that every senior citizen can retire with dignity and respect? And if we have a program, for example, of universal health care, that will disproportionately affect people of color because they disproportionately uninsured. We got an agenda that says every child in America should be able to go to college regardless of income. That will disproportionately affect people of color because it's oftentimes our children who can't afford to go to college. Obama, as far as we can tell through searching Nexus, has not changed or revisited his stance on reparations since 2008. Clinton's position. Clinton's recent and past comments suggest her ideas for helping the black community are no different from Sanders and Obama's. Clinton didn't directly answer the question about reparation at the Iowa Brown Black Forum, but she also suggests investing in black communities and addressing poverty. I think we should start studying what investments we need to make in communities to help individuals and families and communities move forward. And I'm absolutely committed to that. There's some good ideas out there. An idea in the Congressional Black Caucus about really targeting federal dollars to communities that have had either disinvestment or no investment and have had years of being below the poverty level. That's the kind of thing I like us to focus on and really help lift people up. In October 2015, she provided a similar response when asked by the host of the BuzzFeed podcast, Another Round. I'll tell you what. I think we need to make many more investments in everything from preschool education to affordable housing. That's my form of trying to give people the chance to be empowered, to make the most out of their God-given potential. As Fusen pointed out, this was largely Clinton's answer in 2000 as well. When she was asked about reparation during her Senate campaign, she said African Americans deserve an apology for slavery before pivoting to economic conditions. But I think that the people I know and the people I work with want us to stay focused on the future, keep our economy going, keep providing good public education, quality, affordable health care, do the things that will enable people to have the best future for themselves. And that's what I committed to doing. Our ruling. Sanders said he opposes reparation for the same reason that Barack Obama has and the same reason I believe that Hillary Clinton has. The reason he said is the need to focus instead of addressing current economic problems in the black community by improving education, providing jobs, and addressing poverty. That is basically what Obama and Clinton has suggested in lieu of reparations. It's worth noting that Sanders previously suggested that reparations were politically impractical and divisive. Obama and Clinton have not made comments to this effect. In 2007, Obama said reparations could be used as an excuse not to do more for African Americans. We rate Sanders' claim mostly true. All right. I think we back. Right? I think we back. So, again, you just got to see that the video of Bernie Sanders, again, had the conversation with the Senencio, which you'd say Sonny, right? Hostin, right? Or Cummins, right? And they had the view, and a lot of people seen that, and, they took their take on what Bernie Sanders had said. Now, when I looked at what he said, it was like, Sonny started off by asking him about the poll numbers, right? It was like, well, based on the, polls, it seemed like you having some issues with black people. Maybe there's a reason why you have issues with black people in the poll is due to the simple fact about your stance when it comes to about reparations, right? And so you see that Bernie right away, again, took a little offense to that, right? Matter of fact, he acted like if he didn't know what was going to be asked to him, right? And I'll tell you later why I say that, right? So he says that, well, actually, Sonny was like, but so you also, your stance is that you don't support reparations, slaves, for descendants of slaves, DOS, ADOS, BADOS, right? And says, and then she asked him, well, why are your poll numbers so low, right? And so what you see him says that Bernie says, well, according to the last 6 months, my poll numbers have been, pretty good. Matter of fact, going back in 2016, I did pretty fairly well with black people, right? And that primarily, if you look at the polls of this 6 months, it looks like that I'm doing pretty good, and that, I had some good margins there. And again, he stressed the fact that he said young African Americans, right? Now, we being the adults and parents, right? We been here, seen many suns and many moons. Why is it that when people feel like when they want to address the black communities, they want to go to the most inexperienced, not knowing much? And again, I'm not against the younger as the future, right? Think about this, what I'm about to say here. Why is it that black folks are the only people primarily who say it, let's say outwardly, that, it's about the children? Now, I'm not saying I'm not for that. We have children and grandchildren and so forth and all that other stuff. So again, we advocate for the future. That's what prosperity is, right? Self-preservation. But in this case here, it seems like you put all your attention on the young as if the people who have not already are living, who are experienced and seasoned, don't have to have no part of quality of life. They just supposed to be the burdens of historical, again, the red letters in the mailbox. And so we're supposed to act as if like the people who are, again, we're not talking about seniors. What about the people that are not seniors? What about the above mid-20s and up to 60s, and right? What about them, right? So they don't have no future. They're just there. Whatever it is right now, that's just what it is. So everything is focused on the young. When you look at history, you didn't hear them talk about no children in the future. I mean, in history. Only unless they have some, was in positions to rule. But otherwise, it's about grown folks. So when I hear somebody saying that, again, you got good numbers with the children, well, children don't know no better. No, you can play word games with children, and they may not know all the facets to the meanings of words or understand your real true position, but you can't talk that to somebody who's a little bit seasoned in the game, right? You can't just say anything to me and just think that I can't, decipher the bullshit that you might be saying. So what you do is you target the young ones who are, again, smelling brand new. And be not anything for those who may be here may thinking that no, that's not what this is about. You got much respect and love for the young ones. But again, in order for you to get the knowledge and the wisdom, you must sit at the feet of your elders. Do I need to say that again? So again, in order for you, the younger ones, to get the real game that you need, and I know at this day and age, a lot of people feel like some of the people who are older are in your way. Their ideology is outdated, right? And you have some people who advocate for that. But you can go to school and get all the book and what they would call erudition learning and still not and miss on the experiences that you have in your families and people who you may come in contact with are living, breathing historians of their own experience. And them, passing that down and giving you some heads up on it will make you be able to, decipher some of the nonsense that these other folks who don't have the right intention for you, so that you can discern and make better choices, and not just because it sounds good, make you feel good, but in the long run, they don't have no good intent for you. So we're going to say what Bernie said on this part here. We're going to show that the fact that he goes on and he talks about that when he talked about the young, did you see how he constantly, and again, this is part of the orthodoxy of Democrats. When they dealing with black folks, you always want to have this inclusivity of other people. When the question is about reparations and the wrongdoings that has happened to black Americans in this land that you call the United States. Right? And so when every time that is put on the table, it seems that everybody wants to be now kumbaya, we are the world, everybody loves everybody, right? But we're going to decipher and spit the fish from the bone. It's time normally is eat the fish from the bone. We're gonna split the fish to find out where this bone that's trying to choke you. You know how that fish bone get in that neck, boy, you in trouble, right? So we're gonna reverse this and say the bone from the fish. We got to figure out what the bone is in here so that we can eat the fish. So he goes in, he says Latinos and white folks, right? And talking about young, but he was talking, the question that Sonny asked him was about black folks. So he's not focusing on what we, the elders and the parents, he don't care what we thinking, because again, we've been around like he been around. And again, if you ever notice, when news do stories, you ever notice there's a certain demographics that they don't touch when they talk about certain things, or if they do, they get certain type of people? Because, you might say some things that are so real. It's kind of like this conversation about reparations. Everybody want to act like this is a brand new conversation. But again, we've been here for, according to their count, 400 years, right? From their count, the one that they're officially trying to make, that the count that they're counting is 1619. So for 400 years, black people have been having a thought of mind that was never to get on the platform of the nation. So this ain't nothing new. It's just finally it's getting pushed to the table a little bit of the conversation, not legislatively, but just on the conversation of the country. It has taken its own spirit because it is at the due time the bill is due. Now, so it goes on and he says, he gives you this little spiel, right? He says, at this time of this tremendous disparity of wealth gap between whites and blacks, that he said the disparity is great. Who would deny that? understanding Black Americans' history. Now, again, we know that the allies and other family members from other countries who come here seeking, as they say, a better life, that, you know, skewing the numbers, commingling the numbers of people from other and cloaking them as the same can make the demographics and the numbers of data seem that there is some, you know, some progress. Let's be honest with this. You can take other people, again, other nations of family that come from other diasporas that come here, that end up getting the benefits and, you know, prosperity of going to getting the education and getting if you skew them and make them African Americans like we are, then you can make those numbers seem to like there's some progress. And that's why I think that when you look at Yvette Carnell and Toni Moore and what they're talking about, how trying again to make the distinction, then we can have the true representation of what's really going on, even though they already done state the data as to what he's saying, which it's a known fact that the disparity in the wealth gap is due to the simple fact of our historic history that has, you know, been perpetuated for generation. And when this conversation come up, everybody wants to act as if like when you talk about back then, that there has no relevance to today. And to me, that is just either the willful ignorance or the blatant disrespect for oneself and our people, right? And so you see, he talks about that wealth gap. He says, again, what we got to do is pay attention to the distressed communities. Okay. Well, that's what we're talking about. When you talk about distressed communities, even in his rest of his dissertation that he's about to say, who else could you be talking about? Who are the worst hit in this country? As if we was to break everybody into category as nation, whose nation is suffering at pearls? Who are at a, you know, who are closing on a door of no return? You know how they told us about when they talk about there was a door of no return? Well, isn't that what's happening with our people, the DOS, the ADOS, the BADOS? We're getting to a door of no return to put us in a status that it would be almost impossible to get out of. Right? And so he goes on and says, a time of tremendous disparity. Of course it is. Right? And about paying attention to the distressed communities. Blacks, then he throws Latino communities. Again, family, Latinos. Nobody got nothing against y'all. But again, if we talk about the diaspora and where people have been taking up the origins of where your family, of this modern connection, we can't go back and everybody said, well, we was once families when we was on the boats and they separated. That is a true statement. Doesn't mean that there's some resonance of blood ties that we don't have. What I'm saying is your final port of destination of where that route began is going to be distinct from that which is here in the United States. And with that being said is that root which grew from here in the United States is also distinct from that which came from other parts of the diaspora. But as a family unit, we are one. So when we talk about this root in this land here, when we talk about reparations, you're talking about that root specifically. Not to be not inclusive you, because you have a plight similar, equivalent to, but just not in this land. So why is it that everybody wants to, again, try to shadow away from the topic of the reality by trying to bring in other people in instead of dealing with, and this is why the bill is in the red. This is why your bill is in the red, in the pink. It is in this final, you understand? Final payment or before disconnection. And so what you want to do is you want to call up the company and you want to try to tell them, well, you know, I got a water bill, you know, that's due too, and I got my cable bill that's due too. But you know what they saying? We ain't trying to hear about your water bill and your cable bill. We're talking about this bill. Do I need to say that again? Here it is. You got the bill due in the red. You gonna call the company up and tell them, well, you know, I got a water bill due, my cable bill due, my child support bill is due, right? They ain't trying to hear that. They said, that's not my problem. I'm only here to collect what you owe this bill. Now, you won't have to deal with them, calling them and work that out. But when it comes to this bill, it's between you and I. Now, either you going to pay or we're going to disconnect it, right? That's how the bill system works, right? So why is it that the person is trying to talk about other parts of bills that he owed? That has nothing to do with us. And this is not being selfish, right? So he goes on and says that the distressed communities, black community, Latino communities, and white communities. Wait a minute. Hold on now. Wait a minute. See? Look. Now, that would be like, see, now again, Bernie Sanders is Jewish. Do you mean if they would have told that to the Jews? Well, you know, accordingly, that there was Jehovah's Witnesses were also in them camps, right? They called them the Purple Triangle, right? You know, there was black folks in the Holocaust too, right? But it seemed like the only one who getting all the credit, the history, and all whatever reparate and getting the land was only them. I'm going to say that again. When you talk about like Bernie Sanders again as being Jewish, I think it's like Polish Russian type, right? Australian type, something or Austria type, right? So what I'm saying is, what would they have said? How would y'all had feel if they would have been like, well, you know, I mean, yeah, the tragedy of what happened and the atrocity that had happened is tremendous. We're not going to deny that. But you know what? You know, there were, what about those Jehovah's Witnesses they had though? With the Purple Triangle, they were in there too, right? They was trying. It was stuff was happening to them, and you know they were also castrating and sterilization black folks as well. What about that? With the what? How would y'all feel if somebody said that to y'all? Right? You would call them anti-Semitic, right? Because you saying they hating on you. Well, why is it that when the conversation comes to black Americans in this nation, it seems to be some deflected tactic about some other stuff that has no relevancy to what the question is about? So you want to be kumbaya when it comes to having that talk, knowing that the disparity is great. Now, again, Latinos come from other nations. We don't have a problem. Come on in. I got a plate for you. I got an extra room for you. That's fine. But when it gets to the point that it becomes a burden, it's not like you can't go back home. Now, I know based on history and what done took place, you know, people done run the country into the damn ground. That's why people are getting up out of there, right? People gutting it out and taking out the resources and leaving the people in squalor. I get it. I ain't trying to be like selfish and be like, well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to make this analogy here, right? So it's not like they don't have another place they could go. Black Americans, ADOS, ADOS. Yes, people will say we are Africans, tied to the bloodline, tied to the continent, but we cannot go back and be specific to nothing or nobody. This is the only land we know. White folks, you had a privilege. Right? I hear people who send me messages talking about, well, you know, yeah, you know, we were Irish and a lot of Irish. Well, shit. Okay. That's your issue. Again, that's another bill. That's something else. That got nothing to do with what we talking about. This is our bill. You understand? Other people with these other ones don't talk about, well, you know, we entitled because we also were. Well, go talk to them about that. Why all of a sudden now you want to have that conversation? Up until this other time, that was not a conversation. Why all of a sudden now, when we talk about it's a conversation, right? The hypocrisy most people got. You always talking, well, let us get in the front, take out the damn bullet, be the damn bulletproof vest, and then all of a sudden, we done took all the goddamn hits. Here you want to bring y'all asses and try to get the benefits of it. That shit is over with, man. We ain't doing that no more. Right? That shit ain't going down no more. So when white folks are sitting here talking about you inclusive of them, talking about the disparity in this country, but they haven't gone through what we've gone through. There was also some benefits. There was also a back door. There was also a pathway for them to have something. Where was the sentence, the DOS? Where was their back door? Where was their path? Where was their, again, Jim Crow? Reconstruction. Freedmen Act. Right? Did they benefit from the Homestead Act? There's a lot of benefits that other people got that we didn't get none to. Right? So every time when we had a conversation, you want to be inclusive with everybody else. See, that's being disrespectful to us in all forms and fashions of ways. So you want to say pay attention to distressed communities. From day one, we've been in them. Now, some of the brightest and the best ones will eventually, again, when you see some way that you can make some money off them, you end up getting them out of there. If they go and drink all the damn Kool-Aid in the education and become black white people, then they'll end up getting up out of too. But what about the ones that still be themselves, but they're the ones that you can't make money off in that form, but you find other ways to make money off? Distressed community is, again, we've been in the red. You understand? The bill is red. And then they just start, the bill been red for 400 years on y'all count. For 400 years, and just everybody still trying to pass the buck off to somebody else who done had some benefits. Who also had other places that, again, I don't shit on you for the simple fact that, again, you know, if you, again, sometimes you got to stand and make the fight for what you want. And if you ain't willing to do that, somebody else is fighting. How do you get the benefits over them when they willing to fight and you not? Now, he goes on and he says that he said all of this country, right? He says, as president, he pledged to do that, which is to fight the disparity and distress of communities for black, Latinos, and white folks. See, you again just being dismissive by not wanting to deal with the fact about what done transpired. Now, I'm going to get into that other part because, again, this is what it's really about. So, again, Sonny was like, well, you didn't answer my question. So she asked again, so why not support reparations? And he said, well, what do you mean? Oh, here you is, right? You supposedly march with Martin Luther King, right? Remember he just showed that picture? Bernie said was marching with Martin Luther King, right? Remember when Martin Luther King talking about we come to collect the check? You don't know what he was talking about then? You didn't know? He didn't know, right? And all of a sudden now he got amnesia, right? Well, okay, if that being the case, maybe you're not fit. Maybe you just not fit, right? You got amnesia and shit, right? Maybe you ain't fit, right? So what do you mean? So again, he posed it to it, right? What do you mean? What do you mean exactly? What do you mean exactly? Shit, Sonny, but you ain't money, wealth. Huh? Money, wealth. Now, again, Sonny is Puerto Rican and her daddy is African American. Not sure. When you say African American, it could be cloaked in a whole lot of things. But again, I give her just the simple fact that she did sit there and she asked it, and she got some Jew in her too, right? She got some Jew in her too, right? So okay, she was being direct about it, right? Money, wealth. He said to address the crises facing. Right? He said the crisis facing the American people. The crisis. Oh, are we talking about opium? Because when you say American, again, this being whiteologist, and again, this being the Black Minds TV, I done already broke that down. Hyphenation is your American, right? Like we say. Again, that's why I say BADOS, Black American, right? Other people have the nation of origin, Jamaican American, right? The only one who don't have no hyphen is white folks. unless when they dealing with each other, they might be disclosing the origins of where their people from. But American means white folks. So you talking about the distress. He talk about the distress or the crisis facing the American people. The only crisis that we know that's facing white folks is opium, right? That they went and they did all this to again. Now, when my people were going through the crack epidemic, being incarcerated, getting gangs of time, nobody seemed to find that it was an epidemic that needed to be hospitalization, rehabilitation, and given centers where you could go smoke the damn crack and get high and fall out right there, and then we at least be able to take care of you. Nobody give no fuck about that shit. But it's a crisis when it's on you. Now, he's from Vermont. Now, that's a pretty white state, right? And again, when they always talk about black folks and the most about this welfare, that we are the biggest recipients of welfare, I'm still haven't figured out how 13%, when they claiming you 65 or better percent of the country, you gonna tell me that all 65% of your people are employed? And if you do have an unemployed, it's going to be bigger. So you got, in order for you to say that all 13%, majority of that is going to be children. So let's take the higher part of 7% of that would be the children. 7 to 8% of that. So that leaves 5%. There's more women than there's men. So we get 3 and 2. Now out of that, maybe possible, we know most of our black women got jobs. So we're going to say 1% of women, black women, don't have a job. We're just going to hypothetically say that. I don't have the data right here in front of me. And let's say 1% out of the 2% of black men, only 1% are unemployed and incarcerated. You're talking about maybe 2% of the adult population of black people are all on welfare, all on Section 8. Y'all crazy as fuck with that bullshit, right? Just say it for what it is, man. I just gotta say it. I'm sorry. Gotta keep it 100. So this crisis and all this welfare and all this stuff that's being given, right? And talking about all communities, again, everything is about everything else other than dealing with the directness of what was being questioned. And he said, what better way than to deal with the crisis? Now, again, the crisis ain't you're not talking about reparation with black folks. You talking about somebody else. And talking about the distressness in other folks' communities, as you said, Latinos and white folks. We're not talking about them. We're talking about us in particular. Right? So, again, masking, hiding, and I guess, yes, if you're young, you don't see all that. You know, nice little old man, and he talking nice and saying some of the things that make you believe. But again, you put a little bit some experience behind it, you might be able to say, man, that's BS you saying, straight up. That's just what it is. So he said, what better way to do that? He said, than writing out a check. Really? Everybody keeps saying if black folks get some money, it's the worst thing that could ever happen. How is that possible when black folks ain't got money? Is it the fact that the poor black folks get some goddamn money and you know that the taste, right? Champagne tastes with water money, but when they have champagne taste with money, you gonna see who you really is and you ain't gonna like what you see. You understand? Let me say that again. Champagne taste, water money is black folks. Meaning they got good quality, high taste for, you know, material and lavish life. And that's who we is, right? But we got water money. You know how water is versus the other. Now, again, water is the most essential element that you can. Again, everything else can't quench it. And more, again, by the creator, nothing else can do the body better. Unless you got all this pollutants and shit that people put in our water. But when we're talking about substance and we're talking about preferable taste, people don't really prefer water like that. Yeah, water did come back and make this kind of a comeback. It became a social trend where having a bottle in your hand was kind of in, right? And we know water does a body good and replenishes you and all that, make good blood move. We get all that. But I'm just saying, if you could drink Moet and champagne and you know, juices and all that, right? Some people prefer that, right? So that's how it is with our money. We got water money. We coming in just enough to get the special. And you want something to drink? No, just give me some glass. Give me some. Can I have some water with some ice in it, please? Like that. You know what I'm talking about, right? You ain't got enough money to get nothing to drink, but the water will always be sufficient enough, right? Because you ain't got no money, can't afford to get nothing else to drink. So that's how black folks' money is. Champagne taste with water money. Now, what happens when you get champagne taste and you got money? Do you know? See, everybody who know they not in line to get no check got something to say. Oh, black people get money. All you're going to do is give it back. Nigga, you don't know. We ain't never had no money. We ain't had no money. We had some money. Maybe you could say that. You talking about somebody who didn't have no money and trying to make the best. Again, his priority, he or she prioritizing what they need over what they like over what they need. And sometimes certain shit will get, that's why we know about red bills, right? Because some shit is prioritized. Nigga need to get hair cut. Woo, this, and that. She need hair done. Woo. I want to go do this. I'll put this off. You understand? But what happens when black folks got champagne taste and money? You gonna see some of the most coldest shit this planet has ever seen. Huh? And then you have to sit there and look at yourself in the mirror and be angry. This is what they keep talking about, divisive. Nobody wants to see the black American with no money. You want to talk about all these other things, right? We're going to get into that part about that article, right? You want to talk about, again, that was the article that came from the I think what was it called? I forgot the name of that, right? So anyway, they talk about how Bernie Sanders, right, is radical, right? Again, from Vermont. Again, I told it's a white state, right? And I guess he know the crises because, again, Connecticut and all them up there, they toe up there when it comes to that opioid, right? So you heard Ta-Nehisi Coates, or Cortez. I say Coates. It could be Cortez, right? He called out Bernie Sanders in lieu to his reparations about that, right? Because Bernie going to say some shit like, and you're going to hear the mantra of them all going to keep saying job creation, investments in cities, free higher education, right? This basically was a democratic orthodoxy, right? This is some church. That's kind of like part of the church, how they're going to keep spewing this to you because why? It's better than giving you money. Because again, money in itself, right? Money in itself is still not going to be the all-be-all in this. Wait a minute. This will be the greatest court case ever presented in the world. Huh? There's so much on the plate you can put on there. That's why it's just incalculable to even come with a sum how to even say what you gonna pay. It's that big. There's too many because you let the bill get in the red too long. It's ready for disconnection. You understand what I'm saying? You could have been done made way. So let's say these same talks, they talking about job creation, investments in city, and free higher education. Well, damn. Okay, you almost 80 damn years old. What about before you? That should have been implemented then. Even before then, and even before then, we talk about 400 years, and you're still talking about time. That's the problem here. You're talking about time. You want us to now sit around and wait on the possibility is giving you time, right? And our people in the destitute that they in, for what? The atrocity done already done happen and continue to happen. And there's stuff that haven't even been revealed that you're doing right now. So when are you going to deal with some of this shit? Huh? When do you deal with some of it? No? Okay. So again, Ta-Nehisi Coates talked out about about job creation, investment cities, free, okay. And he said that when he went on Meet the Press, right, with Chuck Todd, right? And he says, why aren't you for economic justice on so many levels, right? he says, now listen, Chuck Todd asked him, now those things that you're talking about, when you talk about job creation, investments in cities, and free and higher education, all right, those are economic justice, but those are just some of the other perks that you need to add due to the simple fact of the whole that you created for people due to legislations and shit government put out there to keep people, and there's just so much, right? So even adding that to with the money, it's still not. Those are just some of the more incentives that you're going to add besides the money. Why are you trying to make that just that and then there's still no money? What? Really? Really? Okay. So now he says this. This is what he says. This was his answer to that. He said, well, I'm doing the same as Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Huh? See? Barack Obama, man. Barack Obama. Nigga said he ain't feel about no damn reparations. Now, what they looking at this, if the black motherfucker said he wasn't going to do reparations, what makes you think the white motherfucker going to say it? Do I have to say that again? He's saying, if the white motherfucker said, if the black motherfucker didn't say shit, why are we, the white motherfucker, going to be the one to come and be the savior day when Barack Obama didn't do it? Was because the nigga wasn't cut from the goddamn cloth. Let's keep that shit 100. You paraded a motherfucker and put it in front of us. He got a white mama and an African daddy, and this is the shit we get. And these motherfuckers gonna get up in our face talking about something. Y'all shouldn't be getting nothing. It was you. Let me not say it. Let me cut it. Okay? So now he says that it's absolutely wrong and unacceptable about reparations. That it's absolutely wrong. So much poverty in this country, and even worse in America's inner. He said in America's cities, in the communities. You keep talking inclusive about every motherfucking body else, but not want to deal with the fact that, this was the conversation he had back in 2016. So he's still on par with the same shit he was saying back then. So again, they talked about this on January 11th back on the Iowa Brown and the Black Democratic Forum. And he said the word impracticability and polarizing of nature of the proposal. It's an impracticability. He said it's an impracticability. Right? Okay, so let's look at this. Hold on, let's take a couple of words his ass and use. Now, they call Bernie Sanders a radical, right? So when you think of a radical, you say somebody who's fundamental, rudimentary, constitutional, basic, right? Elementary, right? Could be cardinal, could be vital, could be essential, right? Requisite, supporting, right? Underlining. Right? Simple, primitive. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, he radical, all right. Sure is. Him sure is radical. Yeah, he sure is, right? So when he says this impracticability, right? Let's look at that word too, right? Let's look at that shit too, right? When you say that, other words that'll come to mind is something like to the fact of unfeasible, impossible, unachievable, unattainable, unobtainable, out of the question, right? So listen what he's saying. Out of the question. It's out of the question, right? Right? Then they use the term, you heard that word, divisive, right? Now you know what divisive is, right? Right? It's just basically another word saying dissension, right? So people will disagree with it. People will be at variance to it, conflict of opinion, right? There will be objection to it, right? Right? So who is the people they referring to when it's in divisive? So if we pro for it, then who's in opposition? It has something to do with that poll again. Did anybody see the Julian Castro, where they told that the poll stat to put up to 68% to 20, or the 28% to 62% of people that said they didn't want reparation? Well, why would they? They're not benefiting from it. So why would they be pro for it? They will come with every goddamn excuse in the book not to do it. But if it was some shit they could get, oh, that numbers would change, wouldn't it? Wait a minute. We're gonna ask. Now see, this is the hypocrisy in this land. This is the hypocrisy right here. You will ask the same people who got a problem in all this legislation and all this racial hate and all this stuff, and ask them that, do you want to support that? Well, let me ask you the question. There's a lot of shit that black people had to support without have to be in the room or have a yay or nay about it, but we dared to do it any motherfucking way, right? So I don't think it's not a question. It's not a topic for discussion, huh? It's not a topic for discussion. This is what it is, huh? You got money for war, but you can't feed the poor. You got money for everybody that come up in here. You got all kind of programs, everybody, but you can't get back for which the opulent life that you live and you continue to live. All right, keep on with it, man. Hey, y'all got to do what y'all got to do, right? So let me go and finish this up and get to the next part, right? So I did about a damn hour on this, right? So finishing off, he says again. He says the real issue is the poverty rate and unemployment rate. Let me tell you something. There's going to be black people when that money ever comes that will be lavish and spend their money and be, you know what I'm saying, and do all the things again. They're entitled to it. It's their money. But there's a big segment of them who gonna know what to do with their money, and that's where the problem comes in at. See, you the genie out the bottle, but you ain't gonna be able to put that genie back in the bottle. Right? So again, I just want to bring that out again, bring a little something to it, because again, I got more parts of this show here. So let me go ahead and let this play out. And again, you tell me what you think. Go on, there's some comments, hit that like button. And so let me go ahead and start this up and get into the next part, because I didn't want to go too long on it, but I did, right? You know, it is what it is. It's the heart and soul of the mind of where we at right now. So let me go ahead, set this up, go ahead, do it, and then be back afterwards, right? Check this out. Let's get it.
A Chinese delegation will go to Indianapolis this week to claim a massive trove of artifacts brought to the U.S. by an eccentric Indiana collector. The FBI seized about 360 ancient items, from ceramics to weapons, in 2014. In a story you'll see only on CBS This Morning, Anna Werner reveals what else the government found. She's been working on this story for months. Anna, good morning.
Good morning. And these artifacts were part of a vast collection gathered by a man named Don Miller. He was 91 years old when the FBI showed up at his home in 2014 for what may be the largest seizure from a private collection ever. They said Miller wasn't supposed to have many of those rare and ancient items. Now we're learning some unsettling information about what else the FBI found.
When the FBI showed up at Don Miller's home in rural Indiana in 2014, it was a shock for people who knew him.
He was very beloved. He was very charismatic.
Former local reporter Liz Dykes interviewed the 91-year-old former engineer about his time in World War II, his missionary work in Haiti, and most of all, his huge collection of artifacts from around the world.
The entire house is a museum. There are things everywhere. It was just mind-blowing.
Miller even gave tours of his collection. So when the FBI came calling, she says,
I wanted to know what they were looking for. There had to have been something.
There was something the FBI hasn't talked about until now.
When I first went into his house and saw the size of the collection, it was unlike anything we'd ever seen.
Tim Carpenter heads the FBI's art crime unit.
Unlike anything you'd ever seen.
Not only me, but I don't think anyone even on the art crime team.
FBI photos never before shown publicly give a glimpse of the collection. Some 42,000 items, including pre-Columbian pottery, an Italian mosaic, and items from China, some that Miller labeled Chinese jewelry from 500 BC.
Roughly half of the collection was Native American, and the other half of the collection was from every corner of the globe. This piece, as you can see, it was labeled by Mr. Miller.
The problem, Carpenter says, was that the FBI found a lot of it had been illegally obtained. Miller admitted he'd gone on digging expeditions in foreign countries and around the United States for decades, in violation of antiquities laws.
Did he understand that he had obtained some things illegally?
He did.
So he admitted that?
He did.
Miller eventually agreed to let the FBI seize some 5,000 artifacts so they could be returned to their countries of origin. But Carpenter says all the FBI's careful planning couldn't prepare them for another, more disturbing discovery.
About 2,000 human bones.
2,000?
To the best of our knowledge right now, those 2,000 bones represent about 500 human beings.
Those human remains, he says, were also dug up, nearly all of them from ancient Native American burial sites.
Okay, that sounds like a staggering number.
It's very staggering.
Why would anybody have that many human bones?
I don't know. I truly don't know.
Native American burial sites dating back thousands of years have been a source of fascination for archaeologists for decades.
Meticulous care must be exercised.
This old government film showed the excavation of an ancient Native American village in Alabama. Over time, many other sites have been looted by people seeking artifacts and even skeletons.
This comes down to a basic human right.
Holly Cusack McVeigh is a professor of anthropology brought in by the FBI on the Miller case.
We have to think about the context of who has been the target of grave robbing for centuries, whose ancestors have been collected for hobby. And this comes down to racism. They aren't digging white graves.
Experts determined the remains found at Miller's residence likely came from Native American tribes, including the Arikara. In North Dakota, tribal official Pete Coffey is working with the FBI to bring them home.
All too often here, we have been treated as curiosities rather than a people here. They could very well be my own great-great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother, that had been, I characterize it as being ripped out of the earth,
Miller died in 2015. We wanted to know what his widow thought about all of this.
Hi. Mrs. Miller?
Yes. So we went to Miller's home, where a Chinese terracotta warrior figure stood guard outside.
I can't comment on any situation at this time.
But Carpenter believes in his later years, Miller understood the ramifications of what he did.
I think he felt compelled to try to do the right thing and return these home.
Returning those Native American ancestors home, which is what Carpenter says is the FBI's most important mission now.
You have to treat these people with dignity. These are human beings and people. It matters. It has meaning to people today. It has meaning to our children and their children.
Well, so far, the FBI has already returned items from Miller's collection to several countries, including Cambodia, Canada, Colombia, and Mexico. They've already returned some Native American ancestral remains to tribes in the South Dakota region and are planning a large-scale repatriation of remains to other tribes in the coming months. Wow. It's a big project. It's going to go on for years.
A very unusual story.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about that life-size statue right outside the home when you went to go visit. Yeah, the terracotta.
Have you ever seen the terracotta soldiers in China?
No, never.
I have. They're pretty impressive.
Never.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. So,
In the past few years, I have seen all too...
No. We don't want that yet. All right, wait, hold on. All right, so let me give you the article to this. It says thousands of artifacts were recovered from an Indiana home. The FBI is struggling to find their owner. You know I'm going to say that again. Thousands of artifacts were recovered from an Indiana home. The FBI is struggling to find their owner. This is coming out of the CNN, February 27, 2019, and this is how it reads. A Ming Dynasty vase, an Italian mosaic, and the bones of hundreds of Native Americans have been sitting in an Indianapolis warehouse for years. A group of FBI agents had quietly started returning them, but they hit a snag. They've only been able to return about 15% of the items because not enough people have come forward to claim them. FBI Special Agent Tim Carpenter said in a statement, the artifacts, which are part of the largest single recovery of cultural property in the FBI history, were found in 2014, the FBI said in a statement. A tip led the FBI art crime team to a Waldron, Indiana farmhouse where thousands of artifacts from around the world and even the remains of hundreds of Native Americans were being stored. Don Miller, the farm owner, was a retired scientist who helped build the first atomic bomb. According to the FBI, he had traveled extensively for decades, collecting the more than 42,000 items in his house. Don Miller would collect pretty much anything, FBI Special Agent Tim Carpenter said in a statement. He collected from just about every corner of the globe. But his passion, I think, was Native American culture goods, he added. The FBI says some of the artifacts were obtained illegally. Before his death in 2015, Miller agreed to voluntarily give the artifacts he acquired in violation of state and federal law and international treaties to the FBI, officials said. He cooperated with us throughout the course of the investigation, Carpenter said, and it was his wish that we take these objects and return them to their rightful owners, and for the Native American ancestors to be reburied appropriately. For nearly 5 years, the FBI has worked with the archaeologists, anthropologists, tribal experts, and foreign governments to handle and return the remains. Holly Kusek McVeigh, an associate professor of anthropology and the museum studies at Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis, has been working with her students curating and preparing the items for shipping. We make sure that nothing is just thrown in a check bag and tossed into the belly of an airplane. Everything is handled with the utmost care, Kusek McVeigh said. But it's not easy to determine where everything should be returned to. There's no single expert that can tell us everything we need to know about all of this material, Carpenter said. Authorities have contacted hundreds of Native American tribes and notified members of the United Nations about the recovered artifacts, hoping they would identify them. They are also giving them access to a private website where they can review the items and claim them. And yet, the future of thousands of items at a climate control warehouse outside Indianapolis is still unclear. Our ultimate aim is to repatriate every single one of these pieces, at least one that we can determine were obtained improperly or illegally, Carpenter said, but we need the public help and we need academia's help and we need the help of our foreign partners to do that. The FBI is urging Native American tribes and nations around the world wishing to determine if they can claim the artifacts to contact the agency and submit a request at artifacts@fbi.gov. All right, so here it is. We see that a story was broke that they said that thousands of thousands, 42,000 to be exact, 42,000 artifacts that belong to people of color. You heard in the video what a white woman said that when they talk about excavating, archaeological digs. Now the reason why I'm a little tongue-tied is because I got I got a little, you know how I get like a paper cut? Kind of scrape. I got a little right on the tip of my tongue. So sometimes I'm going to say some things that sound a little different, but, I'm going to get through it, right? I should be on injured reserve, right? But we'll do it anyway, right? If your job is speaking, then it's either toothache or something with your tongue will be an injury, right? So, okay, I'm going to Jordan it out. So anyway, so here it is. You excavate all the lands like the white woman said. You don't go and dig up where white folks at. White folks' bones don't have no value. The only value is to get the people of color bones, right? And dig them up and then try to, again, assort as to who they are. Now, again, the question I have here is this. Why they keep just only saying Native American bones? How do you know they Native American bones? Just because you threw out Mongol and then could they be family? Could they be? I don't need to say it, do I? Could they be? Because again, that was in 2014. He wasn't dead yet. Think about that. He wasn't dead yet. He was still alive in 2014. And you see how a good old white man do? He say, oh, he decided that it was his wishes. What you mean his wish? What you mean his wish? Nigga, you stole the shit. Ain't no wish. Nigga, you should be criminalized and locked the fuck up. You shouldn't be talking about his wish. So now, you giving him the soft way out. You're still trying to make him like he was a upstanding, righteous man. If you didn't figure it out, matter of fact, you know what it was? You heard in the story said somebody tricked on his ass. Somebody said, hey, the mother got shit up in there, right? So maybe he didn't want to do a deal. They want to give somebody something. And like, they tricked on him, right? So here's the FBI and the archaeologists, right? They all been in there for over 5 years. It's 2019. You think they ain't went in there to make sure that they don't want to save us some Negro bones? Huh? Negro bones. Everybody want to say Native American. Ain't Native American. Who is that really? Huh? You can ask some people that's on this black corner of the internet. They're going to tell you that was us in there, right? And the Indian, right? Again, no disrespect if a Native American should hear me, right? But there's a possibility we don't know who's who. We know who people claiming. We have people who say, again, they say they Jewish or Jews, right? They say they them peoples. I remember Netanyahu, I read what Netanyahu said, well, they left here black and they came back here white. I'm going to say that again. He said, Netanyahu had said that he said the Jews, they left here black and they came back here white. So what is he saying? Is he trying to say, well, these ain't the same people? Well, it could be the same thing too, because again, when you read some of the documentation and the things about the voyages of those so-called coming to the New World, the description that they said don't fit what some people might be saying. So again, I'm not going to take nothing away from you, okay? We know there was some deals made and certain people got certain kind of contracts and deals and part of that organization. Okay, what it is, but that don't mean I can't question as a DOS, ADOS, BADOS, because again, for some odd reason, DNA tests will always say that we can't be of the soil of the Americas, even though a lot of us is going to say, well, you trying not to be an African. That ain't what I'm saying. If they're saying that the artifacts coming from all four corners of the world, what part of that ain't Negro? Need I say that again? What part of those that they said they going to have to ask them to figure out, why don't you come to somebody like us? Maybe they some of our people, but no, it can never be that, could it? Never could it be that. Never would you even admit to that, would it be, would you? So, I'm just saying, here it is. Somebody been doing something, excavating and doing digs again, and then having this collection of bones. And again, they still always remember back in the day, those old schools that come out, they had the hooky booky shit to, like, you can't dig. Like, okay, It's like certain people got this kind of mythology about if you fuck what they did, there's a curse, right? Or say, in Egypt, they got the curse, right? Curse of the mummy, right? Indians said they had a curse on them when you fuck with that shit, and you can't excavate Jewish people, right? So who left? One left. And they ain't digging up white people bones. I don't know if they even dig up Chinese bones, right? So again, as the woman said, this racial, when it comes to this excavating, because they only dig up black people, people of color. So, kind of funny. Again, there was a story for you. And, I just wanted to bring some light to it, let you know that they out here and they doing what they doing. They always doing what they doing. Again, they don't respect. They don't put no respect on the ancestors. Again, for your inquisitiveness to know. Right? You know that the world was color before you got here. You still trying to, in search of the, they still in search of themselves. You understand? And wherever they go to try to put the flag on, they keep excavating and come to find out that the people there is of color. So when are you going to give up and just recognize that, again, somehow, your existence came through some other place, some other ways. You understand? This is what it is. So we're going to move on. I'm going to move on off that. I'll let y'all go ahead and get off on that one and tell me what you think, right? Let me tell me what you think, right? So I got another story here, right? Let's see what this is. What is this here? Well, this one here, I'm going to give you a back-to-back on that one. I'm going to give you the back-to-back. And before we get into that, let me go ahead and get there for those who sitting on their hand. You gotta let me hold some, right? Let me hold a little some, right? I ain't asked for much. Let me hold some, and we'll be right back after this.
In the past few years, I have seen all too many blacks fall into the trap of calling any white person who disagrees of today's race politics, but it was actually
Rustin.
Bayard was Martin Luther King's collaborator and the chief organizer of the 1963 March on Washington.
And the right to vote. What do you say?
Years before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus, Bayard was arrested and beaten by police for doing the same thing. One of 24 times he'd be arrested throughout his life. In fact, he was arrested right here at the World's Fair in New York City while demonstrating peacefully for equality. If you've been paying attention, you may have seen Bayard popping up a bit this Black History Month.
Bayard Rustin was one of the most important figures.
I think that Bayard Rustin is one of the people who's kind of almost criminally under-recognized.
It's heartening to see Bayard entering the public consciousness.
A civil rights hero was almost erased from history all because of homophobia.
But these portrayals mostly focus on his identity.
He is black, gay, socialist pacifist, right? Like, he's actually America's worst nightmare.
He was openly gay, he was a socialist, he was an organizer. That's great, but what's missing are his actual ideas. And why is that? Well, his intersectional credentials fit the spirit of modern activism, but his ideas, not so much.
The problem can never be stated in terms of black and white.
The point of
says to me, the sun is shining. If the sun is shining, I say, yes, the sun is shining. Because I want to tell the truth.
I'm a writer and race even opposed the concept of African American studies as a unique discipline. Take the recent blackface scandals. In 1951, Bayard argued against banning blackface minstrels.
Now the reason why I didn't play that is because they're gonna take the video down, so I got to take the sound off, y'all.
And I'm prepared to be a time when I can save women and children from being shot down in the street, and if you're not, you're nothing but a fool. Order has ever been developed on the basis of color. It must be on the basis of class.
The United Methodist Church said Tuesday that it will not recognize same-sex marriage or gay clergy. More than 800 delegates from around the world met in St. Louis and voted in favor of the church's traditional view of sexuality. The group also vowed to punish disobedient clergy who ordained and marry LGBTQ people. Some protested the decision, but an American pastor there said his church will continue as normal.
Yeah, the United Methodist Church is unique because it's global. We love that, but viewpoints on how to do ministry with LGBTQ people differ so widely around the world that it makes coming to a consensus in a body like this really difficult. I think the important thing is, despite what happens here, the gathering is going to continue to move forward with a ministry that fully includes all people, including LGBTQ people.
United Methodist Church is the third largest faith community in the U.S.
All right, so I gave you that one video. It was talking about with Bayard Russell. All right, and we know Bayard Russell, again, for those who know about the civil rights and with Martin Luther King, he was kind of a left-hand man, right? And so, again, as this story broke, it was trying to show that Bayard Russell, right, again, his advocacy about telling the truth and about pushing the agenda that was at the hand of the time had nothing to do with his sexual preference, right? And we see this lately as, again, this mantra of toxic masculinity, that being a man seems to be something wrong, because it's kind of like with the other story about excavating bones only of people of color, not of white folks. So when they say toxic masculinity, are they also speaking about white men? I don't think they put that. It's like a separate category. Like the white man got his own category and everybody else is fighting and vying for other positions, right? So in the case of Bayard Russell, again, those who, you know, as time went on, it had been disclosed that he was gay. James Baldwin and so forth. And okay, gay people didn't just start, right? Gay people have always been, to some extent, in history, right? Now the thing is, people assume that black folks are so homophobic, right? And that, you know, as again, in certain families, people do have people who may have a lifestyle or that is their preference, right? And again, you have to, again, as the second story talked about, like the United Methodist Church that rejects gay marriages. Now, is that just the ideology, the natural ideology of the people, or is that the institution and what they learn through the institutional teaching? If the Bible, which is supposed to be the Word of God, is talking about that, then again, like I said, and I'll keep saying it once again, the gays' fight is not against the populace, the lumpen proletariat, the people. It is against the institution of the church. Your fight is to say that God didn't say that. And as long as that you can't defend that, or you can't get them to take that out, people are going to have the notion of mind to have that way of thinking until either you get rid of the church. And as you've seen, they was talking about, well, the Methodist Church needs to really change their doctrine. I don't think they have the power to do that. Then obviously, if you saying that you can redact what you have the power not to implement, then you don't believe in what it stands and who supposedly gave it. And so when you look again back at Bayard Russell, being intellectual and a person who would be considered LGBT, it's right now, it's kind of like the ADOS, right? You have people who have thrown a kind of a little, a cog in the wheel and brought in sexual preference. But those who understand the time and what this is all about can see the bigger picture, and that's not part of it. And that would be the same thing if you would look at the time when Bayard Russell and then was in the movement of the civil rights. People would put certain stuff to the side because of the bigger picture. Now, some of the stuff that they talked about in that clip or that movie clip or that little docu-series, as they call them, he says class, not race. I'm trying to figure out, wouldn't class still be some kind of form of discrimination or bias? I mean, just think about it. Class, so there's different classes of people, would be the same thing as the distinction about race. So you have to abolish all of that. See, when you try to take race out of the equation, again, we understand, and again, people who would fall under the LGBT, of course you want to take away race because that's teaching people and to get them into the preface to get that biasness out of them so that you would be more accepting. We understand why you use that, right? But again, because of the ingrainedness of most people, and especially when you come to black people, again, I'll say it again, as people of DOS, ADOS, and BADOS who come out of the South, who are part of the rebel states, who are part on the plantations, God had to become real to us because of the situation and what we were in. So if you think that based on what we have historically been through, and that what was passed on that gave us the strength and the vigor to endure, that we're going to toss that away. Now, again, we know a lot of us become erudition and, know knowledge. But again, the spiritual aspect of what we endure, the Creator had to become real to us in order for us to endure. So majority has matriculated over time. Those words, those laws and commandments have become real. And so it's kind of like DOS, ADOS, and BADOS sets the trend in this nation. So if you can get ADOS, DOS, BADOS to do what, this implementation of this new world order, then you can get everybody else to do it. So it seems like it's kind of like the last hold, the last bolt in the fence is if you can get black Americans to go with it, then everybody else will follow suit. And so that's why, to me, it seems like the attack on what they would call toxic masculinity is because as long as there are men who, again, as the white man is not considered a toxic masculine, he is not considered toxic, the black man has to be toxic, and otherwise there can only be one man. Now that doesn't, again, take away the simple fact that the people, again, if that's your preference choice and that you believe you are born in that way, that's your choice. But again, don't try to use, in this case, Bayard Russell as to where it should make it seem like, well, we need to rethink our position. Again, the foundation of black Americans until after those 80s came, right? So, I seen somebody today who said an excellent point. If you look at what happened after Bayard Russell and Martin Luther King and then what they established, and Malcolm X as well, and those coming from them, right, from 64 up after the Civil Rights Act, it only took 20 years to destroy all of that. I'm going to say that again. If you think about it, 1964 to get the Civil Rights Act. Now black people finally supposedly are now in the game with having rights and so-called are now free. It only took 20 years to destroy all of that by bringing in the crack and the drugs and bringing in the money that created the devastation. 20 years it only took. So to think that white liberalism syndrome, by some standard that we think, because if white people talking down, they're going to always look at you in that way, because they only look at you because, again, I got a story in here. When you talk about slavery, you only look at it as from a white man's position. I got a story that I'm going to play that is going to show you that the white woman was just as much in the game, because, again, you got to remember she was somebody's child. And so if she was the only child and then somebody who had something, who do you think they left their inheritance to? Well, I'm going to play that next. And because, right, you say intellectual activism of a person who is LGBTQ or T, that black people can't allow them to be a part of that. I guess it just depends on what the movement is. You should understand, if it's a church organization based on the ideology and the fundamentals of what their belief is, they're going to have a problem, right? They're going to have, because, again, then it's a contradiction to what they believe in. Now, if it's something outside that has nothing to do religiously, then maybe that could work. But, again, it seems like the callous is, if you can get black people, and particularly black men, because, again, that's what a lot of people like with the Jussie Smollett situation. They said black men didn't support that. Yet, as much as it has been now considered to be the truth of what really took place, were we wrong? Were we wrong? See, that just seems to me this, again, everyone again, let me play this. Enough of that. Ain't no need to go there. Let me show you this story I came across about white women and them being the beneficiaries and having their play in the structure of being white women at that time. Let me see, play this, and let's see, hopefully this is the right one. We'll be right back. The Mistress Tools. You know I'm going to say that again. The Mistress Tools. This story was done February the 26th, 2019. White women and the economy of slavery. And this is how it reads. By 1836, Sarah Barnes had become something of an Alabama magnate. She owned a home, land, rental properties, 10 stocks in a local bank in Mobile, and 27 enslaved people. On the eve of her marriage to Dennis Welch, Barnes drew up an antenuptial agreement, a legal document outlining the terms of their union. In it, she stated that she would continue to have sole, entire, and exclusive use, benefit, and enjoyment of her property. All of the rent collected on her real estate holdings would continue to go to her, as would any potential wages earned by her enslaved people rented out for their labor. Barnes engaged a trustee, Richard Redwood, to help her manage her holdings, but he was allowed to take action only if she delivered him written instructions. Produced in the presence of 6 reputable persons and in the absence of her husband-to-be, she also reserved the right to make her own will. She was to be drawn up in the presence of 4 people, one of whom had to be a clergy, then signed, sealed, and published so that Dennis could not change its terms after her death. 6 reputable persons? A clergyman? What can account for Barnes exacting enumerations of her property rights and her palpable worry about her future husband's meddling? She knew that when she married Dennis Welch, she would become, in the parlance of the period, a feminine covert or a covered woman. She lose the right to bring suit, make contracts, and own property. All of it. Her small empire of field and flesh would become his. And losing her enslaved people, this would be the bitterest pill of all. Because in these people, so much of her wealth resided, and in the ownership of them, so much of her power, her anti-nuptial agreement marked her refusal to give them up. This is a remarkable, appalling document. It is an archive or archive of a woman who navigated a legal system designed to exclude her in a country where she wouldn't be able to vote for another 84 years. And yet there is absolutely nothing feminist about this document, because while it may bear the imprint of a woman who broke with common law and gender expectations, it simultaneously exposes why she did so and at whose expense. Barnes doubled down on slave ownership, embracing white supremacy as a means to overcome her disempowerment on the basis of gender. Her opposition to patriarchy and her subjugation of black people were one and the same. In fact, they were mutually constrictive. Barnes was not alone in using slave ownership to gain back some of the money and power allotted to her under patriarchy. The historian Stephanie E. Jones Rogers, they were her property. White women as slave owners in the American South is a definite account of how deeply invested white women were in the slave economy of the South. Jones Rogers' book is a compendium of the actions taken by white women to preserve the wealth they had in human flesh as their own. It scrupulously dismantles any image of slave-owning women as somehow less involved, less culpable than their male counterparts. Jones Rogers also makes a case for why these slave-owning women were so motivated to protect their status as slave owners, and her answer has to do with the racial logic of capitalism. Recent studies of the economics of slavery have shown that plantations were financially unstable places, bankrolled on credit, often intractable in debt, and subject to the perennial bust of the systems of the transatlantic capitalism of which plantation slavery was a crucial part. For women, Jones Rogers argues independent wealth represent a bulwark against the financial risk their husbands assume when they played the speculative cotton market. Should all be lost, at least their money would be safe, so would their status as dominant people. Slave ownership provided white women with a mechanism for joining their male counterparts in the ruling class, which might otherwise have been closed off to them. Wealth and racial domination could get them there. Thus, they literally capitalized on their whiteness to gain power. And they did so at the devastating and ongoing expense of black people, and black women in particular. Her presence made the plantation a home. Her absence would have made it a factory, wrote the historian Ulrich Bonnell Phillips of Plantation Mistresses in 1918. In Phillips' account, the white mistress assumed the double responsibility of tending to her white children and her black charges as well. She worked with a never-flagging constancy, served as head nurse for the sick, and taught morals and religion by precept and example. She was busy as the plantation domestic manager and moral authority. Phillips' the influential account of the plantation household recapitulated the image of the white mistress promoted by the lost cause propaganda of the Reconstruction and Jim Crow South. The plantations were by large happy places, thanks in no small part to the kindness and civilizing influence of white women. This image of the kind industrial plantation mistress has a long life in representation of American slavery. It has bred a series of interrelated falsehoods, including the notion that mistresses were less physically violent towards enslaved people than were their masters, and the myth that mistresses had secret alliances with enslaved women because they shared a similar kind of suffering under the male dominance. This latter falsehood gained currency among women and feminist historians of the middle and late 20th century. Anne Freor, Scott, and Catherine Clinton, for example, who prioritized the category of gender over that of race in examining power relations under slavery. Some academics saw plantation mistresses as so constrained by patriarchy that they developed a more general critique of the subjugation of women. But white and black, even if women at the time couldn't speak about it, they were, the story went, silent abolitionists. Historians and artists have been working to correct this false and sanitized view of plantation mistresses. Jones Rogers, they were her property, is part of this movement. Her study builds on the work of historian Thavolia Glimpf, whose groundbreaking book, Out of the House of Bondage in 2008, showed that white women harassed, beat, maimed, tortured, and killed enslaved people with such brutality and impunity as white men. Mistresses category sided with masters, not with slaves, especially when it came to the administration of violence. Jones Rogers' work also aligned with recent representation of slavery in popular media and historical fiction, which had revised their portrayal of white women as the myth of a special feminine compassion has begun to be dismantled. Here one might think of the distance between Scarlett O'Hara of Gone with the Wind and Mary Epps of 12 Years a Slave. Rogers continued to fill in the violent picture set out by these revisionaries, which is to say accurate representations. She writes, for example, of one woman who elected to whip enslaved people with the nettle weed branch rather than the cowhide whip because the nettles buried under the skin and left a long lasting burn, but did not scar, and thus did not decrease the person's value. And herein lies the greatest innovation of Jones Rogers' book, to show that the power white women wield over enslaved people reflect in horrific violence extended into the economic structures of slavery. They engage in brutal acts with the logic of the market in mind, hers in the first book to isolate white women as economic actors in the slave system, and thus the first to dismantle another long-standing myth about these women, that they simply stood by as men conducted the business of slavery. Each of the book's chapter takes shape around a different economic theme, and some are titled with quotations by a formerly enslaved person who poignantly and summarily dismisses as false notions of white women passivity. I belong to the missus. The muses done her own bossing. That old man took delight in selling slaves. Taking her leave from these first-hand accounts, Jones Rogers then supplies a stunningly voluminous archive of legal documents, newspaper articles, advertisement letters, diary entries, plantation ledgers, and records of sale, which she mobilized against a century of received historiography. One of these economic fictions is that white women, even if they owned enslaved people, did not fully participate in the buying and selling of them. Many have believed that the public slave market was the domain of men, assuming that gender codes of decency kept women out. Not only did white women appear at the public auctions, where they participated in dehumanizing acts of inspecting black bodies, but the slave market often came to them. White women bought and sold enslaved people in their parlors and on the front porches. It is false, Jones Rogers explained, to separate the plantation South into private and public spaces. Households were the locations of slave markets too. Jones Rogers also stressed the ways in which white women strategically invested in the reproductive lives of black women and intervened in their sexuality for profit. The reproductive capacity of black women and the fact that children inherit their legal status as free or enslaved from their mothers made many white female owners come to see enslaved black women as better investments. With each baby born, their wealth grew. White parents were thus more likely to give their daughters enslaved women and girls, and enslaved owning women made it a point to keep female slaves from their households. Jones Rogers documented cases where white women orchestrated the rape of their enslaved woman and acts of forced breeding. She implied too that white women were often responsible for bringing enslaved girls into households where they were systematically raped by their male masters, a system that Harriet Jacobs, an enslaved woman who lived under the sexual menace of her male master and the psychological torture of her female mistress, describes as ingeniously designed so that licentiousness shall not interfere with avarice. By the onset of the Civil War, white slave-owning women were so attached to the institution of slavery that they went to great lengths to keep their enslaved people in bondage. When enslaved people fled their plantations during the war, women took out fugitive slave ads in newspapers, wrote letters to military officials, or appealed to male relatives for help in recapturing them. Some even hunted them down themselves. When they were unable to retake possession, they appealed for compensation for their financial losses. Since the Emancipation Proclamation did not liberate people enslaved in the border states that stayed loyal to the Union, Missouri, Maryland, Kentucky, Delaware, and later West Virginia. White women living in these states appealed to the United States government, not the Confederacy, for the return or compensation for their enslaved people. Even after 1863, some went to further extremes, uprooting and marching their enslaved people outside the Union reach, called refugeeism, chaining them in cellars or locking them up in prisons to stop them from fleeing. These accounts highlight how desperate white women were to maintain legal and physical control of their enslaved people, even as cataclysmic wars over their right to do so unfolded. They had accrued great wealth and social standing, and they had done so by embracing white supremacy. Jones Rogers showed that white slave-owning women in the South did not fight racial patriarchy because the system was open to them on the basis of whiteness. They joined it. They wouldn't let it go. They were her property, in a story of white women attaining power, and the book makes it undeniably clear that there is nothing inherently feminist or liberatory about the mere fact of women gaining power. It reminds us that we must always ask, power of what kind and at what cost? All right, so there's your story. When you look at the white man of his story, when it comes to slavery, you better look at the white woman just as well, because she also inherit through her family, like they say, generational wealth. But she would, you understand, inherit at a time when she had no rights as a woman, but she had to use law. So it was in those laws and that she used, and the way that the statutes or the way that it was set up, that if she got married, she had to set up ways so that she didn't lose. Because if she inherited slaves, that was her wealth. And the wealth, again, was your status, and status became your power. So you heard the story, I believe, when they say George Washington, they always say that Martha gave, that George Washington, a lot of his slaves came from Martha. And so women of that time would get married, but had, again, as I said, anti-nuptials. Would kind of like be a, what they call a prenup today. What you come in with is separate from what we will come together with. So when we leave, the rules of the contract has already been stipulated. So they had anti-nuptials, and the way that they had it designed, so that if something would happen to her, she would die. Based on that, it took 6 clergy and so forth and judges that they all had to be present, and there was certain, you know what I'm saying? So you couldn't. It would be hard to do that. And even when it was all over with, when they were saying about slaves running away, it would be white women that would be put in ads in the paper calling for military, go out herself, and even petition the government to pay for, compensate for the loss. So based on, as you heard in that story, it talks about she would also have the black woman, if she didn't like you, she would have you raped, and understood the game of slavery by you having children put more wealth in their, you understand, as you would say, their portfolio. So now we understand why a lot of the black women were raped, because again, the baby, according to the way they wrote historically, that if your mother was slave, then you are a slave perpetually. If your mother was born free, then you could be free. So if you had a slave, and that means that every child that you were born was perpetual slave, that was now again inheritable more wealth. So when we see today, and seeing again, as we've seen the history being revealed, and they showed that the white man, it's always the white man, but you better look at the white woman as well, because again, she understood, in order for her to play into the game of power, she had to be into the white supremacy, because again, it was about capitalism. So when you see a governor giving the child some cotton, right, just remember this story. As you seen the other woman in Maryland say she was in a nigger district. So I wanted to get that out. Again, I wanted to make sure I got something out. I know a couple of days I haven't been doing. Again, I got a lot of things I'm trying to put together, trying to get this channel back and up and humming. So I want to thank you for those who came out, subscribers, fam, and so forth, passerbys. Hope you enjoyed. And again, this is Mr. Blows Your Mind, come with another thought-provoking show. They're going to get better, because again, YouTube is going to change, so I got to change to adapt as well. So if you like readings and not so much videos, and I may have to put some renditions of a lot of y'all, the reason why you're here is due to some of the stuff that you've seen earlier. I may go back to that format. So again, ADOS, DOS, BADOS, fam, stay black. John Henry Clark says all we got is each other. See one another, give it a universal nod. What's good, fam? Got love for y'all. And until the next show, peace, love, hair grease, and all that. And you know how I got to get out of here on it. Got to do what I got to do, right? Because I am the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. And so let's get it off and end the show like this.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody everybody in the power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything. Can you feel
Luther and I, and everyone in this arena tonight, are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was designed with black people in mind. Right on, and it definitely was not prepared for black people to, in the end, begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they've died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. Right. What good news for the sheep might be bad news for the wolf. They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saved 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish, but when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu, all white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here? Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You got to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the sixth version.
5 months before. There are only two possible explanations. 5 months before. Either no one told me,
when no one knows. Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to You can't make me do anything like this.
Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptist. We're not brutalized because we're Methodist. We're not brutalized because we're Muslim. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga. And if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true. I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, "Brother Greg, you coming by today?" And I said, "Malcolm, I love you." And I said, "I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there." He said, "What do you mean, Brother Greg?" I said, "Well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East." And I said, "But I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you.